I am Jeffrey Griswold, President of the New York State Association of Town Superintendents of Highways, and I'm the Town of Preble Highway Superintendent. With me representing the Town of Palmyra, also my first Vice President, is Michael Basil. We apologize, but at the same time this is happening, the County Highway Superintendent, Kevin O'Brien, is at a swearing-in ceremony for their association. We appreciate this opportunity to submit testimony for your consideration as you review the Governor's 2016-2017 budget. We'd like to begin by thanking you, the members of the legislature, for your steadfast support of local roads and bridges. As you know, our collective membership is responsible for ensuring the safe operation of 87% of the state's public roads, half of its bridges, and plowing not only our huge system, but over a quarter of the New York State DOT's roads. Every time there is a winter weather event, the hardworking men and women of our local crews ensure New York drivers get to and from schools, hospital, work, and other destinations safely. We are pleased to see Governor Cuomo propose increased funding levels in the executive budget for the New York State DOT capital plan and the new additional programs for local and state bridges and roads. As part of this proposed capital plan is a $1 billion Pave New York program to be split evenly between state and locals. Another new program is the $1 billion Bridge New York to replace and rehabilitate bridges. Like Pave New York, we have been told the monies for Bridge New York will also be split 50-50 between the state and the localities. However, it is imperative to note that this $20.1 billion proposed 5-year New York State DOT capital plan funding level is not enough to prevent the further deterioration of New York's highways and bridge system. The governor's proposal maintains the CHIP funding level at $438 million and $39.7 million for Marchicelli, but does not include the $50 million extreme winter recovery money we received last year. There is also a $500 million for an extreme weather infrastructure hardening program for investments in roadways statewide that are susceptible to flooding. But it is not clear how this funding would be distributed or if local roads are eligible for a fair share. Our associations support a 5-year allocation of $3.7 billion, $742 million annually, in CHIPS Marchicelli funding and $750 million or $150 million annually for a local bridge and culvert program. The executive budget includes a 5-year, $1 billion Bridge New York program split between the state and localities. This proposal appears to be an improvement over the current state and local initiative that is part of the current budget. When the first 2 years of the 5-year, $750 million program was allocated, New York State DOT, who chose the projects with no local input, split the number of state and local projects equally. 23 are locals, 23 state-owned. However, the state bridge projects totaled 55% of the funds, and just 2 locally owned bridges in New York City accounted for 66% of the local bridge funding allocation. We're hoping that the new Bridge New York program is more effective in achieving regional balance and maximizing local decision-making and flexibility, which is why we are requesting the local Bridge New York funding be distributed through CHIPS. We cannot emphasize enough the importance that both local portions of the Pave New York and Bridge New York programs be distributed through the CHIPS formula and be funded with state dollars, not federal funds. By using CHIPS as the funding mechanism for the local side of the program, every municipality across New York State will benefit. The CHIPS formula is based on local highway mileage for all municipalities and motor vehicle registrations for counties and New York City. This formula allows the local highway superintendents and commissioners of public works, the experts in their localities, to make decisions on what road, bridge, and culvert rehabilitation and reconstruction is most important. We are also pleased the executive budget includes a 5-year DOT capital plan, which will allow long-term predictable funding levels and more effective planning. This fall, for the first time, the administration did not release a DOT 5-year capital needs analysis, which we believe to be in excess of $28 billion. Traditionally, the funding levels for both the DOT and MTA systems were based on multi-year needs analysis and were released in advance of the adoption of the 5-year capital programs. Mike?
I'm going to take over from here. In the fall, Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio announced an agreement to jointly subsidize the MTA's nearly $11 billion funding gap for its proposed $26.1 billion 2015 through 2019 5-year capital program. While we're not clear on where the funding for this state commitment of $8.3 billion will come from, we certainly appreciate this vital investment in downstate transit. We are hopeful that you and your fellow legislators can work with us to ensure that funding parity is restored between the DOT's Highway and Bridge 5-year capital program and the MTA's capital program, with each program receiving an equal funding level of $26.1 billion. As you can see from the chart included in our testimony, 3 of the last 4 DOT MTA 5-year capital programs were virtually identical in size. In the early 1990s, the Dedicated Highway and Bridge Trust Fund was created to pay for New York State DOT's capital program, and the Dedicated Mass Transit Trust Fund was created to assist the MTA and other transit system capital programs. At that time, drivers statewide were asked to have a portion of their gas taxes and auto fees directed to the Dedicated Mass Transit Fund. Today, New York's drivers pay hundreds of millions of dollars annually to mass transit, about 90% of which goes to the MTA. In return for drivers' financial assistance to transit, it was originally agreed that the DOT and the MTA's 5-year capital programs would be similar in size and would be negotiated simultaneously. Having a 5-year highway and bridge capital program that truly meets the needs of our state's residents is our top priority. We believe it is essential the MTA and the DOT capital programs are equal and that a significant portion of the resulting additional funding be allocated directly to local highway departments throughout the state. To meet a greater portion of the critical needs of the local transportation system, we request a 5-year allocation of $3.7 billion, or $742 million annually, for CHIPS Marchicelli funding, and $750 million, or $150 million annually, for a local bridge and culvert program. The local system's needs are great and well documented. The New York State Comptroller's studies indicate that a large number of road mileage is deteriorating, and many bridges in the state are rated structurally deficient and functionally obsolete. According to the 2014 Comptroller's report, 34% of bridges are deficient and 48% of road pavements are rated fair or poor or getting worse. The Comptroller estimates there will be $89 billion in unmet local infrastructure needs over the next 20 years, with much of this shortfall on the already deteriorating local transportation system. In November of 2013, our New York State Association of Town Highway Superintendents conducted our own needs study of the local transportation system. Our analysis determined that on average, local governments outside New York City should be spending $2.32 billion annually on their highways and bridges. Currently, these municipalities spend only about $1 billion annually, leaving an annual shortfall of $1.32 billion. So what is needed now? In previous years, even in tough economic times, the legislature has responded to the dire conditions of the state's transportation systems and augmented CHIPS and other local transportation funding, but more is required. MTA DOT parity will help provide the funding needed to reverse the deteriorating conditions of our local transportation systems and make significant progress in its rehabilitation. We are urging support for a significant increase to the CHIPS program to help all municipalities in the state extend the life of our assets and maintain our vast system, and an adequately funded local bridge and culvert program that will provide direct funding to local governments and add flexibility needed to address local conditions. Our associations and the mutual constituencies and communities we serve appreciate the support of our state elected officials who partner with us to ensure that we all get the job done. When it comes to providing the public with a safe and functional statewide transportation system, one that supports jobs and economic growth for our communities, we request that you and your legislative colleagues make the same state funding commitment of $26.1 billion to our roads, bridges, and culverts as the governor has pledged to mass transit. We look forward to continuing to work with you and to make more state funding and resources available to meet the critical needs of our local transportation systems. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
I have
Questions?
Oh.
Step-
Yes, just a couple of quick things. Both, thank you very much for the presentation and giving the perspective. I know you mentioned, I think CHIPS in this budget is at 438 million, which would be the same as what we had last year, but without the winter recovery money. So in essence, that's a reduction from what local governments are going to receive. But you lay out some of what we really need. Are we getting, is your message, are we getting further behind in maintaining our local roads because of funding levels of where we are?
In my small town just south of Syracuse, we're holding our own if you don't have another winter like we did last year. To the wisdom of the legislature last year, we did have the Winter Recovery Fund 2 years in a row. This winter, we've been blessed with a lighter winter. I'm just hoping in the spring I don't have something that goes awry. It's going year to year. There's no long term. My big hope with the energy prices coming down, for years they were going skyrocketing double digit. And I'm really hoping that with some increased funding along with lower oil prices, aggregate prices may hold off, we can get more work done to make up for these years of not being able to keep up. I mean, we have a golden opportunity right now to be able to really get some real work done that your constituents and mine can really appreciate.
You talked about the recommendation that the Pave New York program, as well as the bridge program, be distributed, those resources, by a CHIPS kind of formula. We heard from the commissioner today, one, that the bridges, she didn't allude to that would be considered, and said that the other formula was being determined for the PAVE. Your recommendation would be to do the PAVE along using the CHIPS formula.
Well, instead of using specific projects, which depending on how this is laid out, there are no details at this time, CHIPS statewide, whether you're talking transportation or any other education or anything else, CHIPS, by and large, is a very fair money. It's not an upstate, downstate issue. A lot of CHIPS money goes to New York City. We have no problem with that. Long Island, it's equitable. And here we keep talking parity, we talk equality. I think it's important that you understand that this CHIPS formula is as complicated as it can be. I mean, we just hit the high points, is what we generally believe, the county associations would agree, I believe. It's fair, and I think that's what we're asking. It's not a competition upstate, downstate. It's a fair, equitable way of putting a program out forward.
I think in your presentation, you also said that this last year, there was some of the choosing of projects and whatever without input from localities. The commissioner did mention today that they would be looking for input from local governments. Is there a best way to do that, to give that input, recommendation to be a part of negotiations or a part of recommendation to the executive of how that should happen?
I can tell you that in our testimony, we said that it's very frustrating, and anybody sitting in our shoes or outside of the metropolitan area would be frustrated that most of that local funding that was deemed and said to be local, 62% of it went to 2 New York City bridges. And that's frustrating. I honestly don't know an actual formula or way of doing it. I mean, you're basically either going to spread this money out fairly as CHIPS, which is our first choice. If you make it competitive, you have your bigger departments and bigger towns and like that have, grant writer type people that can do it. And myself, I am my own secretary in my small highway department. So I do everything soup to nuts. So I would be relying on myself to, if it was a competitive basis, I probably would have a tough time with it, to be honest with you. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, and thank you also for the work you do in your local communities, but those you represent across our state in keeping our local roads passable and in the best condition they can within the restraints that you have. And hopefully, as a part of this budget, we can move to giving you the resources to get us in a better position. Thank you.